I'm going to embarrass him for a second because actually I don't think he's in here right now. I think he's serving in kids right now. If you haven't met Jair, you're missing out. Like you need to get a chance to meet him. Incredible guy, just awesome. All right. Hey, if you are just getting back from spring break, or if you didn't go anywhere like I did, hey, welcome to LifeBridge. And if this is your first time here, welcome. My name's Matt. I'm one of the pastors here. You picked a great weekend to start because today we're starting a new series leading into Easter called 1 Week to Live. And that may sound a little bit morbid at first, but it's not intended to be at all. Think about this. If you knew you had 1 week to live, what would you do? Like, what would you do? I think would you spend your time with as many family and friends as you possibly can? I mean, I'm definitely doing that. Or you do something just crazy, like free solo climbing, or you're gonna do base jumping, or you're gonna try to hit as many things as you possibly can on your bucket list. I mean, maybe you're gonna go on a trip to a place you've never been, but you've always wanted to go. Instead of watching Yellowstone, you're gonna spend that week pretending you're a part of the Dutton family and you're a cowboy on some ranch. Yeah, some of you know what I'm talking about. Like maybe you're taking a dream golf trip. Like I think for me, I'm gonna take my bucket list and combine that with family and friends. That's just me, but for you, if you had 1 week to live, what would you do? Now, I think it's fair to say, and let's just assume that we would all spend time with family and friends. We can assume that. And I also think that we would all do everything we possibly can to go out with a bang. We're going to try to make that last week as awesome as it possibly can because we don't have anything for us coming on day 8. And as great as it is to hit things on your bucket list, it actually might be a gift to know that you've got 1 week left. The reason why it might be a gift is because you know exactly how much time you've got. And if you know how much time you've got, theoretically, then we would all spend it well, in theory. But even if we're spending as much time as we possibly can with people we care about, we're still probably doing the things that we want to do, or the things that we feel like we need to do. Yeah, hit your bucket list, that's great, but really in the end, we're still making that week about you, your bucket list. And if it's about you, at the end of that week, your bucket list is going to be gone too. There's a song that I'm hearing pop up a lot lately. It's coming up everywhere. And one of the lines in the chorus of that song says, "One day you'll leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember." One day you'll leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember. I get what that song is getting at, but that particular line in and of itself is a logical fallacy because you're gonna live this world behind, but when you do, you're not gonna remember it. You're not gonna remember it at all. So what this song is doing is it's reinforcing a value that is becoming increasingly popular, increasingly bought into in the Western world. The value is this: you're gonna get one life, which is absolutely true, and you gotta do everything you can to get as much out of that life as you possibly can. I'm gonna call this value the individual centrality value, meaning your life is centered around you. You get one life, you need to do everything you possibly can to get as much satisfaction out of that life as you can. That's what this song is talking about. It's exactly what it's talking about. And if you buy into this value, if you believe this value that's really big in the Western world right now, that your life is about you, then your life will end with you. And that also might sound like a logical fallacy too, because, well, of course my life is gonna end with me. It actually doesn't have to. There's another way. There was an 18th century American theologian named Jonathan Edwards. And Edwards wrote some incredible stuff. He was a very, very influential preacher. He was right in the middle of the Great Awakening that happened in the 1740s. What I love about Edwards is he had this list of personal resolutions that he tried to live his life by. One of them was this: I will never do anything that I would be ashamed of doing in the last hour of my life. I'll never do anything I'd be ashamed of doing if it was the last hour of my life. Now think about that for a second. There's wisdom in that. If it was the last hour of your life and you knew it, would you argue with your spouse? If it was the last hour of your life, would you spend that complaining? If it was the last hour of your life, would you ignore your kids so you could scroll through stuff on your phone? If it was the last hour of your life, would you do something that was a rejection and rebellion against God? If it was the last hour of your life, would you spend it listening to me? Cool, I know where I'm at, awesome. If it was the last hour of your life and you knew it, would you spend it on yourself? Now, the thing about that resolution is we're never going to know when the last hour of our life is. So shouldn't we always live like it's the last hour of our lives? Like it's the last week of our lives? Because it might be. But we get so caught up in the future. And we focus on what will happen or what won't happen. We get so focused on the future that we completely miss the present. And if we miss the present, I promise you the future's not going to be very pleasant. Because in reality, all of us are going to have 1 week to live. We just don't know when that's going to start. But unlike us, Jesus knew exactly when the last week of his life was going to start, and he lived it completely differently than we would. He didn't try to fill out the rest of his bucket list. He didn't try to do everything he could to make those last 7 days as enjoyable as he possibly could. He did go out with a bang, but his life didn't end at the end of that week. And I'm not talking about the resurrection. I'm talking about what he set in motion the last week of his life, something that he set in motion that's still going on and affecting people today. Here's what I mean. Jesus lived and approached life very differently than we tend to do. I mean, think about this. Would you rather spend your life or invest your life? Like spending is subtracting, right? Investing is putting it to work, hoping for multiplication. So are you subtracting something from your life? Are you spending it, or are you investing it, hoping for compound interest? I mean, how do you view life? What lens do you look through? That life is meant to be spent? Are you looking through it through the lens of a consumer? Or are you looking at it through the lens of an investor? Western values tell us that life is meant to be spent. Life is meant to be consumed. Jesus would tell us that life is meant to be invested. And if Christians are Christ followers, that's what it means to be a Christian, follow Christ, then we're trying to imitate Jesus. But one area that we will miss big time in how we view life and how we actually live it is if we think we're supposed to spend it instead of invest it. Jesus knew exactly when his last week was going to be, but he always lived like there was one left. He always lived that way. He did things like an investor, investing in other people so that there would be multiplication and it would bless everybody else. That's still reverberating today. What he set in motion then is still affecting you and I today, whether we can realize it or not. So in this series, we're going to look at a couple of the things that Jesus did in his last week leading up to Easter, how those things are actually a model for us. And if we follow the same model, not only will we multiply, but will affect everyone around us for the better, even well after your week is up. So following his lead, can we live like there's 1 week left? Can we live like there's one? I mean, how different would your life look if you lived like there was one left? How would that affect the people around you, like your family or your friends or our church or Northern Colorado? I mean, what would it look like and what would it impact people? How would it impact people if you lived like there was one? One of the things that happened in Jesus' very last week was he had this very important dinner. He has this Last Supper with the 12 disciples, and this was such a critical moment. He really doubles down on everything that he taught for the last 3 years. He takes all the stuff that he taught these disciples, what he called them to do, what he modeled for them, what he encouraged them in, what he sent them out to do. He really just kind of doubles down and reinforces all of that. In fact, in my opinion, the two greatest moments of teaching from Jesus were at the Last Supper and the Sermon on the Mount. So he really doubles down on that. He institutes communion, which we celebrate every single week here. We're going to do it later on in the service. I mean, this is such a critical moment in Jesus' life. And then an interesting conversation breaks out at the dinner table with the disciples. Luke 22 talks about what happens. It says, then they began to argue among themselves about who would be the greatest among them. Okay, they're having the goat debate. Like, I love this, the GOAT debate, the greatest of all time. Who's the GOAT? You can have this debate about anything you want. That's the beauty of this. Anything or anybody, it's great. Let me throw some out at you. Who would you say the GOAT is, the greatest of all time? How many of you think it's LeBron? Oh, I love my church. I love my church. How many of you would say it's Jordan? Jordan's the GOAT. Yeah, don't be, like, come on, all right? If you believe it, like, say it, all right? Let me give you another one. This is when it comes to burgers. What's the greatest of all time? Is it Five Guys? How many of y'all like Five Guys? One person, okay. Way to own it, that's good. Or is it In-N-Out? Yeah, it's In-N-Out, it's In-N-Out. Or one more, sitcoms. What's the greatest of all time? Is it The Office? Or is it Seinfeld? Okay, because I'm preaching and I'm wearing a microphone, I get to decide. And the answer is, it's The Office. Like, nothing against Seinfeld, but it's The Office, right? I love these debates. I could do this all day long about who or what is the greatest. But this is the Last Supper with Jesus. He just got done telling them that he's about to be killed. In fact, minutes before this argument breaks out, Jesus actually says, hey, one of you 12, one of you guys is actually going to betray me. He just said that just minutes before. So they're like, well, it's not me. It's not me. Could it be me, Lord? Well, it's not me. So let me talk about how I'm the greatest. I mean, how tone deaf do you have to be? How arrogant do you have to be to argue about who's the greatest? I mean, this is a little inappropriate, don't you think? It's not even the first time they've had this debate either. These guys have argued about this multiple times before. In fact, two of these guys have their mom ask Jesus if they can sit next to him when he's on the throne. Like, just quick point of clarification. You are never the greatest at anything if you have to have your mom ask a question for you. You're just not. You're out of the running at that point. But that's what these guys are arguing about. They're arguing about who gets the title, who gets to be by the throne, who's accomplished the most, who's got the most talents. That's what they think will get them the title and the throne. So Matthew starts arguing for himself because he's this financial wizard. Peter starts spouting off his resume. Hey guys, you may remember me as the only disciple to ever walk on water. Please top that. But John's on the other side of the table reminding Peter that he's also the only disciple to ever fall into the water. And then everybody else is telling John that he's a suck-up. I mean, how arrogant do you have to be to say that you're the greatest? How much self-awareness do you have to lack to make an argument for yourself and do it with a straight face? That's what they're arguing about. And Jesus lets this go on for a few minutes. I can't imagine what he was thinking listening to this. But then he speaks up. He says, Jesus told them, in this world, kings and great men lord it over them and their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you, it will be different. I love that. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant. Who's more important? Is it the one that sits at the table or the one who serves? Well, the one who sits at the table, of course, but not here. Not here. For I am among you as one who serves. So Jesus takes this argument and he flips it upside down. Greatness isn't a problem. Our definition of it is. Like, we think the great person is the one who gets ahead and elevated above everybody else. We think the great person is the one who achieves and accumulates the most. Like, we think the great person is the one who has more talent than everybody else, and they execute on that talent. The great person is the one who sets the standard for whatever. And if they've got a great platform, then obviously they've got to be a great person. Greatness is success, status, platform, and notoriety. Really, today's definition of greatness is a throne. When we think about it, all those things are encompassed into a throne. It could be a throne of whatever. You're the king or queen of whatever, fill in the blank. Today, the definition of greatness is a throne. And if greatness is a throne, then we're going to be a lot more willing to step on people and pull them down so that we can climb up. That's why the disciples are fighting about this. It's exactly why they're fighting about it. They're pulling each other apart, pulling each other down so that they can climb up to the throne. And if we're being honest, not much has changed in the world from that dinner table argument until today. Because deep down, we all want to be great. We do. In fact, I would argue that it's wired into you to want to be great. Like, nobody wakes up and says, you know what? Yeah, I just want to be mediocre. Like, nobody says that. Like, deep down, we all want to be great. We want to be great at least at something. We just tend to have the wrong definition of greatness. And if we're being really honest about it, just like the disciples are arguing about this, we want to be great and we want everyone to know about it. Secretly, we want people to acknowledge us. We want people to recognize us as great. Like, we do. And on top of that, we live in a culture that not only celebrates greatness, but it actually worships it. So we look at greatness and think, well, look at all those privileges and perks and passes that come with greatness. Look at that person, how great they are. Look, everyone celebrates them, everyone worships them, and then what's wired into us is we want that admiration too. So then our desire for the wrong definition of greatness starts to show up in different places. It shows up when we make little but subtle comments that are really just meant to inflate our own reputation and draw attention to our own resume. Our desire for the wrong definition of greatness, it shows up when we poke holes through sharp criticism in somebody else's achievements, somebody else's accomplishments. Oh yeah, they accomplished that, but hey, you know what? I really know the backstory. Like I know what really happened. I know how it was really just kind of handed to them. And hey, they've got all these faults over here. Here's all their growth edges. Our wrong desire, the wrong definition of greatness also shows up when we feel that quick feeling of disappointment when somebody else gets ahead or somebody else wins, somebody else gets recognized. Man, they got propped up. Man, why am I disappointed? And we want to be great. But even if we achieve today's definition of greatness, where we're really at, we still wouldn't be happy unless everybody else knew about it. Like our world will tell you that if you want to be great, people have to know who you are. I mean, what's the point of having a throne if nobody sees you sitting on it? Our world will tell you that if you want to be great, you have to have power over people's lives and you got to have enough money to satisfy all your desires. That's what we're led to believe today. Let me give you an example of this. Harvard University assigned all of their MBA students a project where they had to come up with a strategic plan entitled, What I Want to Achieve After Graduation. So they had to come up with a strategic plan of what they wanted to achieve in life. And surveying all of these different plans that got turned in by these MBA students, do you know what the number one priority was? Wealth. That was number one. Number two, notoriety. And then number three, status. That's what they wanted to achieve in life. And to be clear, this isn't just MBA students from Harvard. Like that's a microcosm of our world. Because that's what we've all been sold greatness to be. Greatness is not the problem. Our definition of it is. So Jesus redefines it. But among you it will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant. Who is more important, the one who sits at a table or the one who serves? Well, the one who sits at a table, of course, but not here. For I am among you as one who serves. Jesus defines greatness, and then he demonstrates it. John 13 actually talks about what happened after Jesus says this. Here's what John says. So he got up from the table. He's done saying all that. He got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he had around him. Verse 12. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I've given you an example to follow. Do as I have done. So just so we're on the same page here, because when we hear feet, yeah, that's gross. But we wear shoes and socks every day and bathe regularly. At least I would encourage you to bathe regularly, especially you middle school boys, okay? Like, trust me, I'm going to help you here on this one. I mean, we wear socks and shoes every single day. We have regular personal hygiene, and still when we hear washing people's feet, that's just nasty. And that's today. Would have been much different back in Jesus' day. And when I say much different, I mean much worse. I mean, when we hear washing people's feet, that's really weird to our ears and our context. But back then, this was custom. What would happen would be if you went to a dinner like this Last Supper, you wouldn't sit at a table like we do that's up in the air. You would sit at a table that was very low at the ground. You wouldn't really sit. There would be cushions and pillows all over the floor. And what you would do is you would lay on your side, propping yourself up with your elbow, with your shoulder to the table and your feet away. Your feet had to be away from the food because your feet were just nasty. Like back in this day, you wore either sandals or bare feet. That was basically it. And you walked everywhere. And when you walked everywhere, barefoot or in sandals, you weren't walking on pavement or on grass, you're walking on dirt and dust. Not only that, not only are you walking for miles every single day in the hot Middle Eastern sun on dirt, so are all the animals. They're walking where you're walking, and there's nobody to clean up the presents that they leave behind for you. You catch my drift? That's what you would be walking through every day. So people's feet were just nasty. They're sunburned, they're calloused, they're peeling, they're caked in dirt, and animal surprises of a variety. And then they'd go to dinner. You'd show up at dinner and you'd stick your feet out from the table, and what would happen would be the lowest ranking servant, and everybody knew who that was, would go around and wash every single person's feet at that table. Nasty job. I mean, would you want to go to the stadium immediately after a Broncos game and clean all the toilets? I mean, that's kind of what this is. And that's exactly what Jesus does. And nobody told him to do it. He just voluntarily does it on his own. So let's just forget the definition of greatness that we've all been sold on our entire lives. Greatness is taking the lowest rank. Greatness is a leader becoming a servant. Jesus didn't grab the throne, and he absolutely could have. I mean, Jesus is the creator of the universe. He lived a perfect life. Like when we say nobody's perfect, well, Jesus actually was. He did all kinds of miracles. I mean, that's great, right? Anybody in here walk on water recently? Anybody else say to somebody who was dead that, hey, you're not allowed to be dead anymore, and they walk out of their grave? Anybody in here yell at a storm lately and it listened? That's pretty great, right? And on top of that, he was brilliant. He taught in ways that blew people's minds from the age of 12 all the way up until the crucifixion. In fact, when he was 12, he's in Jerusalem with the intellectual elites, and they're like, who's this kid? Blowing their minds. He's an incredible guy. He did so many great things. Jesus had every reason and right to grab the throne, but he didn't. Instead, he grabbed the towel. Greatness is holding on to a towel, not the throne. I read this really cool story about a missionary in Papua New Guinea. And he was there and he was trying to translate what Jesus says right here in Luke 22 about taking the lowest rank and a leader being a servant. It was interesting what he was doing. So this native tribe in Papua New Guinea that he was working with, in their society, they would travel to lots of places by canoe. And what was custom was that the most important person would always sit in the middle of the canoe. Most important person's in the middle. The next most important person would sit in the front. And the least most important person, they'd sit in the stern, in the back, and they'd paddle. They'd be the ones paddling. So the way he translates this for that tribe, of what Jesus says right here in Luke 22, he says, if anyone wishes to be a leader, he or she should not sit in the middle of the canoe. Let them sit in the stern, in the back, and do everyone's work. That's powerful, isn't it? Leadership gets talked about a lot, and rightfully so. John Maxwell, who's a leadership guru, you may have heard of him, maybe you've read some of his books. He says that everything rises and falls on leadership. But today we can get the wrong definition of leadership just like we can get the wrong definition with greatness. We think that leadership means power, platform, prestige. It means going up above everybody else, rising to the top. And that's what we're seeing in the world. That's what's displayed. That's what we're told to believe. And yet everything that Jesus said and everything that he did says that couldn't be further from the truth. True leadership is serving. True leadership is voluntarily lowering yourself. So let me ask you, how are you leading? Well, man, I'm not really a leader. That's not me. I'm not really a leader. Well, if that's your perspective, can I just say you've completely underestimated yourself. Anyone who has any influence is leading. And everybody has some measure of influence. Some people have more, some people have less. Your influence might be at the breakfast table. Your influence might be in your office or in your classroom or in your circle of friends. or in your community. Everybody has some measure of influence. We all do. That means all of us are leading. The question is, how are you leading? And if you want to know if you're leading well or not, are you serving? It's really easy to put this high value on leadership, but a low value on serving. I mean, we can talk a big game when it comes to serving, absolutely. We can talk a great game when it comes to serving. Nobody's going to say, serving's bad. Nobody's going to say that. But do our actions follow what we say and what we think? A lot of times what we'll say is, you know what? Hey, I'm a leader. I need to really be thinking at a higher level. I need to invest my gifts and my talents and my leadership and my influence in higher things to make the most impact and the most multiplication. Somebody else can serve. That's great. But I really need to be thinking higher than that. That's our perspective. That's a massive miss. In fact, let me just say this. If serving is below you, then leadership is above you. If serving is below you, leadership is above you. If you think you're past serving, then you're not ready to be a leader. Jesus said leading is laying it down. It's serving. It's voluntarily taking the lowest rank. Do we see that value in our world today? I'm going to voluntarily lower myself. No, I'm going to pull everyone else down so I can go up higher. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. You have a level of influence. At some level, some people have more, some people have less. How are you using your influence? Because at some point, you are going to be the most influential person in the room. You will be. That might happen a lot for you. That might happen just a couple times. But at some point, you are going to be the most influential person in the room. That could be the boardroom. That could be in your home. That could be at a conference. That could be in a classroom. At some point, just like Jesus was at this dinner, you are going to be the most influential person in the room. When that happens, what will you do? How will you use your influence? This is just my opinion, but I think we confuse authority and influence a lot. We confuse those two things. Authority is, I have to follow you. Influence is, I want to follow you. It's a big difference, isn't it? Like Jesus is God. He's got all of the authority in the world. But after he gets done taking the lowest rank on his own, after he gets done serving and washing the disciples' feet, do you think they wanted to follow him because of his authority or because of his influence? Did they follow him because they had to or because they wanted to? Like Jesus demonstrated lowering yourself and laying it down because authority is real. It absolutely is real. But authority does not make you great. If you have authority, that doesn't mean you're great. Influence is what shapes and impacts people. And the starting point of influence is laying down who you are and what you have for other people. That's the starting point. And what's really counterintuitive is the more you lay your influence down, the more you'll gain back. I don't have time to go through all the passages in Scripture that point to that fact, but the more you lay yourself down and give up your influence for other people, the more influence you're going to gain back. That's the starting point. That's also the starting point of greatness. How you use your influence can determine if you're great or not. That's what Jesus did. He demonstrated greatness by serving. He demonstrated greatness by taking the lowest rank. So the question we got to ask ourselves is, are we willing to do the same thing? Are you willing to lower yourself? Not have it done to you, but are you willing to do it yourself? Are you willing to lower yourself? Are you willing to take the back seat of the canoe? Are you willing to serve? Are you willing to be great? Greatness isn't grabbing a throne. Greatness is grabbing a towel. And the world needs to see that right now. People need to see that from us, the church. People need to see us, the world needs to see us modeling what Jesus demonstrated. Because the world is not looking for an explanation of greatness. The world's looking for a demonstration of it. Like right now, we are teed up more than we ever have been, at least in my lifetime, to stand out as great. Because we've seen that this wrong definition, the world's definition of greatness, it falls flat and it just tears people apart. Whether you're a Christian or not, we can see this is kind of bogus what's happening right now. Whether it's here at home or whether it's happening in Ukraine, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of seeing all this. It's frustrating. It makes me mad. It makes me emotionally just wrecked. I'm sad about it, but here's our opportunity. We can be great right now, show people what greatness is by lowering ourselves. And people are looking for other people to lay down their influence to bless other people. People are looking for serving to be valued more than comfort and consumption. People are looking for other people to grab a towel. Your spouse and your kids need to see a demonstration of greatness from you. Your friends need to see a demonstration of greatness from you. Your neighbors need to see a demonstration of greatness from you. Our church needs to see a demonstration of greatness from you. Northern Colorado needs to see a demonstration of greatness from you. Because when you lower yourself and serve, you're demonstrating greatness, and thus changes people. It changes people. Why are you doing this? Let me tell you why. What an opportunity. People might not be won by the gospel message at first. They might push back against the gospel. That's okay. Scripture talks about that. They may push back against the truth. They may push back against the cross. But what they can't push back is your story being transformed by Jesus, and they can't push back when you serve, when you lower yourself. That messes with people in the best way possible. Sometimes we think we have to have all the knowledge and all the answers. Well, what happens if they ask me this question? I won't be able to respond, so we just get quiet and we hunker up, we get scared. Who cares about that? That stuff will come. But what you need to do first is be able to serve someone. I think it was John Maxwell that also said, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. You want to show people how you care? Lower yourself and serve. Grab a towel. That's what Jesus did, and it changed the disciples. And then they did the same thing, and that change has been going on ever since then up until now. So now it's your turn. It's your turn to be great. It's my turn to be great. It's your turn and my turn to lower ourselves and serve. And maybe the very first next step is serving in here. If we can't serve in here in these walls well, it's going to be really hard to do it out there. Or maybe your next step is to get on a serving team. Serve here on Sundays with us. Be on a team, whether that's in kids ministry or in students or in guest experience in the parking lot or in the lobby or in here, maybe on the worship team or production team. And get on a serving team. We want to be a church-led church. Doesn't mean you're committing your life away. It's saying, hey man, I want to step up and lead. I want to step up and lead by serving people so that other people get lifted up, so other people can meet Jesus, so other people feel welcomed here. That's transformative. There's a QR code right now on the screen. And look at that. How perfect was that timing? That was great. It's like we know what we're doing. Take a picture of that. That'll take you to a survey. Just ask you a couple questions. Hey, maybe do you want to serve here? Do you have experience here? Or if you don't know, you're like, I don't know, just help me out. Great, just put that and we'll contact you. We'll get you on a team. Not only will you bless other people, make our church even better and lift other people up, when you serve, you can't help but grow yourself. The people that are on our service teams, whether it's kids, guest experience, worship, production, it doesn't matter. That's the core of our church. Those are the people that look like Jesus. Those are the people that if we could clone, we would. I want that for you. I want that for me too. That's step one. Look for places to grab a towel. Grab a towel in your home. And I got to watch that for me. It's cool, great, I'm a pastor, this is awesome. Cool things can happen here. We could see explosive multiplication. That's great. But if I don't serve Kelly, Sawyer, Georgia, or Suttonwell, then I've failed. And I'm a terrible leader. Grab a towel at home. Grab a towel with your small group. Grab a towel here on Sunday mornings. Grab a towel out there. Look for little opportunities. It doesn't have to be some grand, dramatic, really cool thing. It's the little things. It's the little things. Look for a towel. Because that will change people. And right now, the world needs to see a demonstration of greatness from us. They need to see Jesus. So what he did at the Last Supper in his last week, we need to act like that's our week every week. And watch what God will do with that. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you so much for setting us as an example. Jesus, serving like that can be, lowering ourselves is hard. It requires humility and breaking ourselves of pride. Would you just give us the courage to follow you, to mimic what you did, to imitate the model you set before us, that we would lay down our influence for your glory and for other people, that we would lower ourselves voluntarily so others could be lifted up, so that your name could be made much of, and so that people would be transformed, so that the gospel would go forward, so that our church looks like you, Jesus. Give us the courage to do that. I pray that you would make LifeBridge, make us a church that grabs towels. We love you. It's in Jesus' name.